We're going to look at rearranging equations where we isolate or solve for a particular variable. Okay, so we're using X's and Y's and different alphabetical letters, as you'll see, both lowercase and uppercase. So the first example we're going to look at is to solve for B for this equation. So P is equal to R multiplied by B. That's what we recognise on the right-hand side there, that it's multiply. So when we're rearranging equations, we're going to use the shortcuts that we looked at previously in algebra. So we want to solve for B here. So we want to have B is equal and then all the relevant terms on the right-hand side. So the first step that we would do here is we recognise on the right-hand side it's R multiplied by B. So using the shortcut to isolate B, multiplying on the right-hand side. So if we take it over to the left-hand side, the opposite side, it's going to be dividing. So we already have P on this side. So we're going to bring over the R to divide to give us B. Okay, and ideally we want to reverse that around so that we have B is equal to P over R. Okay, so we always want the variable that we're isolating on the left-hand side equal and then all the terms on the right-hand side. So that's rearranged there. Okay, we're going to isolate. So again, this is just different terminology that we use here when we're rearranging equations in algebra. Isolate small w here. So we've got A is equal to 2L plus 2W. Okay, so sometimes with these questions there's different methods, but we're isolating for W here. So what we would have to do the first step is recognise that 2W is on the right-hand side and we're adding 2L to that. So we're going to take over the 2L from the right-hand side over to the left-hand side. We recognise it must be positive here because there's no sign, so it's definitely recognised as positive. Take it over, so we're going to subtract on the other side. So we've got our A and then we're going to subtract the 2L. And then that equals our 2W on the right-hand side. So again, isolating for W, we recognise on the right-hand side we've got 2 times W. So if we take it over to the other side, multiplying on this side, we'll be dividing on the left-hand side. So what we already have, A subtract 2L over, and then bringing over the 2, so we divide, is equal to W here. Again, we're just going to swap that around so that we've got our variable and then all our terms relative to that on the right-hand side here. Okay, so be careful with the upper and lower cases, they are different. Okay, and we're going to have a look at this question. We're going to solve for N. Small n. So we've got S, capital S, is equal to 180, and then brackets or parenthesis, n minus 2, or n subtract 2. Okay, we want to solve for n. N is equal, and then all the relevant terms on the right-hand side, using these shortcuts in algebra to do this. So, two methods that we could use for this question, because what we want to solve for is in the bracket. So the first method is where we've got brackets or parentheses here, we're going to expand those. Okay, so we recognise that we've got to multiply everything in the bracket by 180. So 180 multiplied by n is going to give us 180n. We've got to subtract here, so 180 multiplied by negative 2 is going to give us negative 360. And we've got capital S on the left-hand side. Okay, so we want to isolate for n. We know that n is being multiplied by 180. So on the right-hand side, where n is, the last thing that's happening to it is it's being, negative 360 is happening there on the right-hand side. So we want to take that over, because it's the last thing that's happening to n on that side, over to the other side using the shortcut, and we're subtracting there. So if we take it over, means we can we can then add the 360 on the left-hand side, and then we've got the 180n on the right-hand side. Now we want to isolate for n, so we just want 1n or n. We know that n is being multiplied by 180, so if we take it over to the other side, we're going to divide by 180. So we've got our s plus 360 divided by 180. And again, we're just going to swap that around. So we've got the variable that we're solving for, small n, equals, and then all the relevant terms on the right-hand side, which is s plus 360 over 180. And we're just going to leave that answer in that format here as a fraction. So here, the right-hand side is a fraction. In the numerator, we have s plus 360, and then that's all over a denominator of 180 here. So we're going to have a look at question 4. We're going to isolate for t, small t. Okay, so we have some uppercase letters as well as the lowercase letters here, which you will find, this is an equation in business math. So we want to isolate for small t. Okay, the small t is in the bracket. We know that it's being multiplied by r. We're adding 1, and then it's being multiplied by negative p. Okay, so we're going to expand the brackets first of all, because we need to get t on its own eventually. So we're going to expand the brackets or parentheses. So negative p multiplied by 1 is going to give us negative p. Then we're adding here. Negative p multiplied, so we can leave it as an addition here, but we have negative p multiplied by positive rt. So ultimately that's going to be a negative. So we can just put that negative in there. So negative p times positive rt is going to give us negative prt, and then we've still got a on this side. Okay, so now we want to isolate t again. We know that t is being multiplied by p, and all of that is negative here. So what we're going to do is take over this p. We know it's subtract on the right-hand side, so if we bring it over to the left-hand side, we are going to reverse the sign, so it's going to be plus p here, and we've still got our negative prt on the right-hand side. Okay, so now the important thing to recognise here is that we have negative p times r times t. So just to isolate t, we know that we have t is being multiplied by negative pr, negative p times r. So to isolate t, we're going to bring all of that, and that's why I'm kind of using brackets here, and just to emphasize that here. So if we bring that over, so we isolate t, okay, the important thing here is that the operation with t is that we're multiplying it by negative pr. So when we take that over to the other side, we're doing the opposite of multiplying, so we're dividing. So we have a plus p on this side, and then we're dividing by negative p times r, and that equals t, which is what we want to isolate for. Okay, now there's a couple of other things that we need to do here to complete this, to make it, to write it more mathematically correct, okay? We could kind of leave it like this, but we need to neaten this up mathematically. So we've isolated our t. Okay, now, the way to look at this is, we've got a fraction on the left-hand side. So I'm just going to put some brackets around the numerator, a plus p, and then we know it's all over negative p times r, negative pr. So the numerator is positive overall, but the denominator is overall negative. So we can think of that as being overall, when we've got a positive numerator and a negative denominator, the overall, the value is negative. So I've still got my a plus p in brackets over, but now the negative, it means that the whole expression, the whole number on the left-hand side is negative, okay? When we've got a positive and a negative, overall, it's then negative. Now, okay, so the last thing that we need to do here is just swap that around so that we are isolating for small t is on the left-hand side, equal, and then all the terms that equate to that are on the right-hand side. Okay, overall, the right-hand side is negative, as indicated here. We've got a fraction with a numerator of a plus p. We've still got to keep those brackets there, and then all over PR. So now that is our solution. We've isolated t correctly. Okay, so it's a little bit trickier with the negative there, as you see. Okay, so let's have a look at question 5, and we're going to solve for small I. Okay, now we have this equation. Okay, K, capital K, is equal to uppercase F plus uppercase I over small I. Okay, so now be careful with the algebra here. A small or lowercase I is different in value to the uppercase I. Okay, so again, that's sort of little things that we need to recognize when we're using algebra, that the uppercase letters are different to the lowercase ones. Okay, so what we have now to solve for I, we want to work out what the unique value of small I is. We see that that is in the denominator on the right-hand side. So, you know, it's going to be a little bit tricky here. Okay, but we're just going to use all our shortcuts accordingly. So the first thing that we're going to identify is that we're adding F on the right-hand side. We're going to bring that over to the left-hand side. So we've got our K. We're going to then take that over then to be subtract F on the left-hand side. And then we now have our fraction, uppercase I over lowercase I. Okay, the reason we identified the uppercase F is because it's the last thing that happens to what we're trying to solve for, the small I on the right-hand side. So the easiest way to explain this is if I put this left-hand side over 1, so I can just make it a fraction by doing K subtract F all over 1. What we now have is basically a fraction on the left-hand side is equal to a fraction on the right-hand side. So we can now cross multiply. Okay, so another great technique that we use in math, when we have a fraction, a single fraction on one side is equal to a single fraction on the other side. Okay, and we can make the left-hand a fraction as we did by putting it over 1. Now we can cross multiply. So that means, okay, so we've got 1 multiplied by I, which will give us just I, 1 times I. And then that's equal, that balances to multiplying this way. Okay, so small I, now I'm going to introduce brackets because I need to multiply that small I by everything in that numerator there, K subtract F. Okay, so we do need to introduce brackets here so that we keep this correct. Okay, and you can do that in math. You can introduce brackets as you need to, and you know we certainly need to in this instance. Okay, so remember we're trying to solve for small I. So now we recognise on the right-hand side that small I is being multiplied by the bracket. So if we take that over, we're multiplying on this side. If we take it over, we're going to divide. So we've got our capital I on the left-hand side. Take it over so that we're dividing by K subtract F. So again, you can leave brackets in if you wish, but we can actually take those brackets out. We don't need those necessarily. And that all is equal to small I, which is what we wanted to solve for. And we're just going to swap that around so that we have the small I that we're isolating for. And then on the right-hand side, all the terms that are applicable to that. So now this is our solution. Small I is equal to capital I over K subtract F. And that's our solution here to isolate small I. So the last question that we're going to look at is number 6. We're going to solve or isolate for X. Again, remember the different terminology that can be used in this. So we have, actually, as it happens, all lowercase letters here. And this is the question that we're going to rearrange and solve for X, okay? So bear in mind that all these questions are just rearranging, okay? So lots of applications in science and business, math, and so on. We're not able to find the unique value of that X in this particular case because we don't know values of other variables, okay? But we're just being asked to rearrange, to solve or isolate for that particular variable, X in this case. So we're not able to work out any numerical values. We're only able to use all the algebra rules to rearrange. Okay, so we're solving for X. So what we notice here is that we've got X on the left-hand side in a bracket and X on the right-hand side in a bracket. So different things happening here. So when we have brackets or parentheses, we expand those, especially if, the X is in the bracket, so we're going to expand those. So on the left-hand side, everything in the bracket is being multiplied by A. So A times X is going to give us AX. We've got a subtraction here, so A multiplied by negative Y is going to be negative AY. And likewise on the right-hand side, we're going to expand the brackets, multiply everything in the bracket by B. B times X is going to give us BX. B multiplied by positive Y is going to give us plus BY here. So remember, we're solving for X. Okay, so we want to put all the terms in X on one side. Now, we've got X here and we've got X here. So, either way we could do this, but we're going to take this term and take it over to the left-hand side. So we're going to just keep all the X's on the left-hand side. So we've got our AX. On the right-hand side, BX is positive. So we're going to bring it over so it becomes negative here. Also, I'm going to recognize that I'm going to take this over to the other sides. So I put the terms with Y on the right-hand side. So on this side, I already have BY. My negative AY on the left-hand side, I'm going to take it over to join that on the right-hand side. It's negative on the left-hand side, so it becomes positive on the right-hand side. Okay, so we're solving for X. So what we need to do now on the left-hand side is we need to take out X as a common factor. So that means we recognize that X is in both of those terms. Okay, so if we take out X, we're going to now introduce brackets and parentheses. If we take out X, we know that X is being multiplied by A, so that's the term remaining here. We've got our subtraction. Now with the second term here, if we take out the X, then we have the B remaining. So all we're doing here is factoring the common factor of X here on the left-hand side. Okay, likewise, we can do the same with the right-hand side. We can identify that both of those terms have a Y, so we can take that out as a common factor. So again, this is kind of good practice with this. If we take out the Y, then what we have remaining is the B, plus take out the Y, we've got the A remaining. So we have that on the right-hand side. So with factoring, it's the opposite of expanding the brackets and getting the individual terms. So you've factored it correctly. If you expand this now, X times A gives me AX, yes, that works. X times negative B gives me negative BX. So I know that I've factored that correctly. Okay, so the opposite of expanding the brackets there. So remember, we're solving for X, so now we recognize X is being multiplied by this bracket. So we're going to take the bracket over to the right-hand side. So we're going to isolate for x on this side. We're multiplying it by that bracket. So when we take that bracket over the other side, we're going to divide by that bracket. Now, actually, I'm just going to swap these two around, okay, just to make it a little bit more consistent. So within this bracket, I can actually swap those around and write it as a plus b, okay? Because we're adding and subtracting, we can do that within the bracket. Just one of the rules that we can recognize here. So the bracket on the left-hand side, we're multiplying. So when we take it over, we're dividing, okay? Now we don't need to have those brackets or parentheses. We can actually leave those so that we have our solution now of x is equal to a fraction on the right-hand side. The fraction is y in the numerator with the bracket a plus b all over the denominator of a minus b. So now we've answered question 6. We've solved and isolated for x. We've got all of those terms correctly on the right-hand side. Okay, so just some key takeaways from this, just as a reminder for future reference. Just a couple of those. So remember, to use the 4 shortcuts that we use in algebra to work out the answers and the solutions more quickly. Okay, so remember those are really useful tools to pick up speed on doing these types of questions. And the other takeaway is whatever you're isolating or solving for, always keep that variable on the left-hand side, have your equals, and then all the relevant terms on the right-hand side. And swap them around as you need to give your final answer there. Okay, so again, just a reminder about that whatever you're isolating for or solving for the variable, keep it on the left-hand side, so I just abbreviate that as LHS, and place the rest of the terms appropriately on the right-hand side, or HS there. Okay, just one question for you to try. Okay, so it's a little bit tricky. You can use cross multiply here. Okay, so solve. So try this question and solve for lowercase r. Okay, so we've got an uppercase e and divided by a lowercase e is equal to an uppercase r plus a lowercase r on the right-hand side in the numerator, all divided by lowercase r. So when you use the rules of algebra to rearrange this to isolate lowercase r, then you should get the solution to be this. If you need extra help, please reach out to me using the links provided in the description below. Also, check out the other videos in the series. Thanks for watching.